My hands were slick with nervous sweat as the shuttle lurched, straining against the icy gale. Beneath us, Eos shimmered with an ethereal, blue-tinted light, casting long shadows that danced and swirled across the desolate, snow-covered landscape. 2 years we'd spent journeying across the cosmos, chasing rumors and scientific whispers about this mysterious planet tucked away in an uncharted sector of the galaxy. Eos was a tantalizing enigma, its existence alone a testament to the vast, undiscovered wonders the universe held. Captain Ramirez, her usual unflappable demeanor replaced by a steely determination, tightened her jaw. "All right, people, listen up. This planet is a wild card. Sensor readings are choppy, probably something to do with that electromagnetic storm swirling around the poles. Comms will likely be spotty at best. We go in, we collect ice core samples, and we get the heck out. Understood?" A chorus of affirmatives rippled through the shuttle's cramped interior. I shared a look with my partner, Anya. Her eyes, usually sparkling with mischief, were clouded with a mix of anticipation and apprehension. This was our first real assignment as xenobiologists, and despite the thrill of finally stepping onto uncharted soil, the risks weighed heavily on my mind. The shuttle breached the turbulent atmosphere, the roar of the engines replaced by the eerie whistle of the wind whipping through the vast, desolate plains. Ramirez brought us in low, scanning the terrain. "Comms are completely fried. Peterson, stay on the shuttle and keep that signal booster primed. We lose radio contact entirely, you prep for immediate extraction. The second, and I mean the second, things go south, you get us airborne." Peterson, our grizzled veteran comms officer with a voice like sandpaper, gave a curt nod. It was a contingency plan we'd all rehearsed a dozen times, but the reality of being stranded on this alien ice world sent a prickle of fear down my spine. The shuttle settled onto a windswept plateau, kicking up a blinding whirlwind of snow and ice crystals. The hatch hissed open, and the frigid air rushed in, stinging my face like 1,000 tiny needles. "Gear up," Ramirez commanded. I fumbled with the bulky environment suit, the layers of insulation making me feel slow and clumsy. Anya shot me an encouraging grin from beneath her sealed helmet, and I managed a shaky thumbs up in response. One by one, we descended into the otherworldly landscape. The ground beneath my boots felt strangely brittle, and a low groaning sound seemed to emanate from deep within the ice. It set my teeth on edge. Captain Ramirez pointed toward a cluster of jagged rock formations in the distance. "Our best bet for sheltered ice is in that outcrop. Williams, you're on drill duty. Jensen, keep an eye on the perimeter. Let's move." The trek to the outcropping was brutal. The wind was relentless, driving needle-sharp ice particles into any exposed flesh. Visibility was less than 10 meters, and the omnipresent groaning of the ice made it feel like the entire planet was about to shift beneath our feet. I shared another anxious glance with Anya. The exhilaration of discovery was now tinged with a nagging sense of dread. Eos was starkly beautiful, yes, but there was a hostile undercurrent to the environment, as if the planet itself was rejecting our presence. Finally, we reached the relative shelter of the rock formations. Williams, our burly geologist with the ever-present grin, unfurled the portable drill. Its high-pitched whine shattered the eerie silence. Ramirez knelt beside him, her face illuminated by the glow of her data screen. "Strange readings," she muttered, brow furrowed. "This ice, it's denser than it should be, almost crystalline in structure. And those seismic anomalies. They aren't random fluctuations. It's almost like a pattern." My pulse quickened. What kind of pattern? Before Ramirez could answer, a blood-curdling roar tore through the air. The ground beneath us trembled violently, sending us sprawling. From the swirling snow, a behemoth emerged, a monstrous figure at least 4 meters tall, its shaggy white fur caked with frost and ice. Its eyes, gleaming like chips of amber, locked onto us with predatory intensity. Instinct screamed at me to run, but my legs felt like lead. The creature let out another bone-chilling roar and charged, the sheer force of its approach cracking the ice underfoot. "Scatter!" Ramirez's voice boomed through the chaos. Anya and I lurched in opposite directions, the clumsy suits hindering our every move. I risked a glance over my shoulder. The monster was gaining on Williams, who fumbled with the deactivated drill, his face a mask of terror. Another roar, a spray of hot, fetid breath. I squeezed my eyes shut, unable to bear the image of him being torn apart. When I looked again, it was to a scene even more bizarre. Williams was on his feet, scrabbling backward. The creature was retreating, its roar tinged with a confused whine. "What the?" Anya's voice crackled over my helmet's comm. Something glinted beneath the ice where the monster had stood. It looked like metal? No, not metal, something translucent, with an almost organic curvature. My heart pounded in my chest. Had we stumbled upon some sort of artifact buried beneath the ice? If so, maybe this planet wasn't so uninhabited after all. Realization dawned, followed by a wave of sickening dread. The groaning wasn't a geological phenomenon. It was a cry of pain. "It's standing on something," I blurted into the calm, my voice strangled. "Something alive." Ramirez was already kneeling at the edge of the cracked ice, peering into the fissure. "By all the stars. Jensen, get over here and shine your light down there." I stumbled over, the beam of my helmet lamp cutting through the gloom. Within the chasm, a gargantuan eye stared back at us, an iris the size of a dinner plate, milky white and veined with crimson. The creature above let out a mournful bellow, clawing at the ice as if to reach whatever lay trapped beneath. "We have to get out of here," Anya's voice was strained, panic edging through. "That thing won't give up." But Ramirez was fixated on the imprisoned creature. "Its pupil is dilated. It's blind. Or near to it. See those ragged gashes on the ice? That's not from this beast, something else did that." "So what, you want to play veterinarian?" Peterson's voice boomed through the comms. "Listen to yourselves. We've got a mission to complete, and if you haven't noticed, that overgrown furball is getting restless." Ramirez scowled but didn't argue. The thing was, Peterson wasn't wrong. As a scientist, I understood the value of the mission, of gathering data on this extraordinary planet. But the sight of those suffering creatures, the one trapped and the one pacing in helpless rage, it was twisting something deep inside me. "We take one sample," Ramirez declared, her voice cutting through the tension. "Just enough for basic analysis. Then we exfiltrate, and we report all of this back to command." Williams exhaled in relief, but Anya and I exchanged a worried look. I knew how this would go. Ramirez had the air of someone about to make a bad call, one fueled by scientific curiosity with a dangerous dose of stubborn pride. There was no way she'd truly be satisfied with a single, meager ice sample. As if proving my point, Ramirez moved closer to the fissure. "Williams, prep the drill. We're going to get that thing out of there." My gut clenched. "Captain, maybe that's not such a..." My protest was cut off by a deafening crack. The ice beneath the monster finally gave way, plunging the behemoth into the depths. Its agonized roar faded into an eerie gurgle as the chasm sealed shut with horrifying speed, as if the planet itself was swallowing the creature whole. Silence descended, broken only by our ragged breaths. Anya reached out and squeezed my gloved hand, and I knew the same thought echoed in our minds. This was no longer simply a scientific expedition. It had become a desperate fight for survival. For a stretched moment, Ramirez simply stared into the swirling snow where the fissure had been. Then she turned back to us, her eyes gleaming with a stubborn resolve. "We finished the mission," she said, her voice grim. "For Williams. Now, Jensen, I need an ice sample, and I need it yesterday." A haze of urgency descended upon us. The encounter with the creatures had shaken us all to the core, but Ramirez was right, we couldn't afford to crumble. With clumsy, trembling hands, I fumbled with the collection kit, scooping up shavings of the unnaturally dense ice. Every rustle of the wind, every groan that rose from the depths below sent shivers down my spine. I imagined those massive beasts lurking just beneath the surface, their roars muffled by the weight of the frozen world. Finally, the sample was secured, and we scrambled back toward the outcrop where Peterson and the shuttle awaited. The storm was intensifying, reducing visibility to near zero. Ramirez pushed on relentlessly, her usual sure-footedness replaced by a frantic determination. Suddenly, Anya gasped and veered sharply to the left. "Look out!" I whirled, my heart lurching. Only meters ahead, a crevasse snaked across the ice, a gaping maw in the pristine white expanse. In the swirling blizzard, we'd nearly walked straight into it. "We have to find another way," Anya shouted over the howl of the wind. Ramirez scanned the blinding landscape. "Over there," she pointed toward a jagged cluster of ice formations. "We might be able to circle around." Her words were ripped away by the deafening shriek that pierced the air. My blood ran cold. It wasn't the roar of the Yeti-like creatures, this was higher pitched, laced with a chilling desperation. And it was coming from the direction of the shuttle. "Peterson." Ramirez was already sprinting through the storm, her fear echoing my own. As we broke free from the labyrinth of ice formations, a horrifying sight sent us reeling. The shuttle was gone. In its place was a monstrous crater, fragments of metal gleaming amidst the swirling snow. Amidst the wreckage, a colossal beast thrashed, a crimson stain blooming across its fur. Another of the creatures. But this one was different. It was smaller, its fur not the pristine white of the others, but matted and streaked with an odd, metallic sheen. It whirled on us, yellow eyes blazing with fury. Cyborg. I breathed, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. The seismic anomalies, the metallic glint beneath the ice, Eos wasn't just home to biological wonders, it was a testing ground for something far more sinister. Run! Ramirez barked. But there was nowhere to run. The terrain was open, the storm had disoriented us, and another of those augmented beasts could be lurking beneath the snow at any moment. We were trapped. Anya drew her pulse blaster, the standard-issue sidearm that felt pitifully inadequate against creatures of this magnitude. I reached for my own with shaking hands. This wasn't how it was supposed to end, not after traveling all this way, not at the cusp of such a monumental discovery. The cyborg creature let out a piercing screech and charged. Just when I thought we were done for, an ear-splitting explosion tore through the air. The beast shrieked, stumbling backward with a gash across its flank. Swooping in low through the storm was a craft I'd never seen before, sleek, obsidian black, and bristling with weaponry. A hatch slid open, and a gruff voice boomed out, "Get on board. We don't have all day." Without hesitation, we sprinted towards the craft, pulse blasters firing haphazardly to buy ourselves precious seconds. I stumbled into the dimly lit interior, Anya and Ramirez at my heels. As the hatch sealed and the craft rocketed skyward, I slumped against a bulkhead, gasping for breath. Staring at us, a man with deeply tanned skin and a network of metallic implants across his face barked, "Consider yourselves lucky. My crew and I were tracking that monstrosity when we picked up your distress signal. Name's Kale. Now, tell me, why the nine hells did you idiots come to this frozen wasteland?" Kale scowled at us, his metallic implants glinting ominously in the dim light of his ship. "So let me get this straight. You stumbled onto Eos, waltzed around like you owned the place, and nearly got yourselves killed by our little experiments?" His tone dripped with sarcasm, underscoring the sheer lunacy of our situation. Anya shifted uncomfortably, while Ramirez met his gaze with defiant resolve. "We had clearance for this mission," Ramirez retorted. "Command has known about this planet for months. You have no right to conduct whatever this is, without authorization." Kale let out a bitter laugh. "Command? They sit warm and cozy light years away while we risk our necks in the field. Eos. It isn't just a scientific oddity. It's a crucible." He waved a dismissive hand. "The creatures you encountered, the Yeti, we call them, they're marvels of natural adaptation. Ice in their veins, strength that could shatter a starship. Perfect test subjects." I felt a surge of disgust mingled with a tremor of fear. "Test subjects? For what?" "Augmentation," Kale replied, his voice taking on a strange, almost reverent tone. "Imagine the raw power of a Yeti harnessed, augmented with cybernetics, integrated into a soldier or laborer. We're pioneering a new frontier here, pushing the boundaries of biological and technological fusion." He leaned forward, the implants on his face catching the light. "Eos is the perfect testing ground. Isolated, relentless, teeming with creatures that have evolved under the harshest conditions. They force us to innovate, to survive, or else become another frozen carcass on this god's-forsaken rock." My mind whirled. It was a monstrous revelation. The Yeti weren't just denizens of this ice world, they were unwitting pawns in some twisted experiment. But Kale's words also sparked a sliver of dark fascination. The sheer destructive potential he described, the ambition to reshape living beings. It was both horrifying and awe-inspiring. "And the trapped creature?" Anya's voice cut through my troubled thoughts. "The one with the milky eye, the gashes." Kale's expression hardened. "A failed subject. Some adaptations. They don't take as intended. The creature was driven mad, a danger to itself and the project. Most failures we can terminate cleanly, but that one was too strong. We had to improvise." He met our gazes with an unnervingly steady stare. "The ice is a buffer. Keeps it contained, weak. Eos itself is our greatest weapon and our greatest cage." An almost grim satisfaction settled on his face. "The Yetis, for all their ferocity, are confined to the frozen surface. They may rule the upper world, but beneath the ice." He paused, letting the implication sink in. "That's our domain." Ramirez's jaw tightened visibly. "This can't continue. We'll report you. Your rogue operation." "Report us?" Kale erupted in another bark of laughter. "To whom? The spineless bureaucrats on command who salivate at the potential of what we're doing here? They might make some token protests, but ultimately, results are all that matter. And we get results." He gestured around the interior of his ship, the gleaming consoles and the faint hum of powerful engines. "You came to Eos seeking discovery. This is the cutting edge. Brutal, perhaps, but it's the future. And if you have any sense of self-preservation, you'll play along, tell command your little mission was a washout, and keep your mouths shut about what you saw down there. His gaze lingered on each of us in turn, the cybernetic implants in his face gleaming with chilling menace. The weight of his words settled heavily on my shoulders. All our ambitions, our dreams of pushing at the boundaries of scientific knowledge, seemed to dissolve in the face of the stark reality Kale had laid out. We were no longer just explorers. We were accomplices, bound to secrecy about the horrifying experiments unfolding in the depths of this uncharted world. The silence after Kale's chilling declaration stretched long and taut. Anya and Ramirez exchanged a look, a mix of anger, fear, and a dawning sense of responsibility etched on their faces. I shared their trepidation, but beneath it all, a sliver of morbid curiosity flickered. Why Eos? Why this planet? My voice startled even myself in the tense silence. Kale's gaze snapped back to me, a flicker of something akin to respect momentarily replacing the menace. You have a scientist's eye, kid. You want the bigger picture. He leaned back in his battered pilot's seat, the ship groaning as it sliced through the turbulent atmosphere. Eos isn't just a random ice ball. It's a relic, a fragment of an ancient war. Millennia ago, a conflict ravaged the galaxy, pitting civilizations wielding unimaginable power against each other. Weapons of unimaginable destruction were unleashed, warping entire planets. Eos is a casualty of that war. He tapped a holographic display, bringing up a swirling nebula of ice and dust. This is what Eos looked like before. Lush, vibrant, teeming with life. The impact, it ripped the core apart, leaving behind this desolate shell. But within. He gestured towards the swirling image. Fragments of that advanced technology. Unstable, corrupted, but immensely powerful. We've been scavenging them for decades, trying to unlock their secrets. And the Yeti? He paused, his voice dropping to a low growl. They're a product of that radiation, mutations fueled by residual energy from the war. Ramirez scoffed. So you use them as lab rats? Experiment on living beings because it's convenient? Kale's face twisted into a grimace. Convenient? This isn't some joyride, Captain. We're a salvage crew, the last line of defense against a threat you can't even comprehend. Those weapons. If they fall into the wrong hands. He trailed off, leaving the horrifying implication hanging in the air. Anya, ever the pragmatist, cut through the tension. What happens now? You drop us on some random planet and erase our memories? Kale shook his head. No. You're our witnesses. If we have to fake your mission report, well, having actual data from the surface will lend it credibility. You stay with us, observe, document, and keep your mouth shut. And what if we refuse? Ramirez's voice was steely. Kale's eyes narrowed. He gestured towards the viewport where Eos, a swirling blue marble, rapidly receded into the distance. This ship is the only way out of this system. And believe me, you wouldn't want to try facing the void in one of those emergency escape pods. The weight of his words hung heavy. We were caught, pawns in a game far bigger than ourselves. The initial thrill of exploration had turned into a claustrophobic cage. We were tethered to a rogue operation, forced to become silent accomplices to a brutal experiment on a sentient species. But as the vast emptiness of space stretched before us, a flicker of defiance sparked within me. We may be trapped, but giving in wasn't an option. There had to be a way to expose the truth, to stop this monstrous experiment, without sacrificing ourselves or jeopardizing the fragile stability of this already volatile system. The journey to Kale's hidden base was a blur of nervous contemplation and tense discussions. Anya and Ramirez, ever the team, remained resolute in their opposition. Yet, beneath it all, I sensed a growing pragmatism. We had to work within the system, gather evidence, and choose our moment to strike. As the ship descended towards a cloaked asteroid base hidden within a vast asteroid belt, I couldn't help but wonder, what other secrets lurked within the depths of Eos? And what terrifying truths awaited us in the shadows of this interstellar salvage operation? The asteroid base thrummed with a strange, discordant energy. The air tasted of metal and stale oxygen, and the corridors were a maze of exposed pipes and flickering consoles. Kale's crew eyed us with a mix of distrust and grim amusement. These weren't the hardened faces of noble scientists and explorers, they were mercenaries, scavengers hardened by years of operating on the fringes of civilization. Kale, perhaps sensing our unease, led us to a cramped observation chamber overlooking a massive excavation site. Within the floodlit crater, a scene of organized chaos played out. Teams of technicians swarmed massive, clawed limbs protruding from the asteroid's surface. Each limb ended in a monstrous, blunted paw, gleaming with a mixture of ice and metal. That, Kale stated gruffly, is the scale of our endeavor. Each limb is part of a single subject, a deep sleeper, we call them. Colossal creatures in hibernation, remnants of that ancient war. It's said they could shatter moons with a swipe. And you're waking them up? Anya's voice was laced with horror. Not waking up, modifying, Kale corrected. Those arms? We scavenged them from the ice flows of Eos. Think of this site as a twisted biolab. We harvest Yeti augmentations and graft them onto these ancient behemoths. He gestured towards a group of figures encased in bulky envirosuits. They were surgically interfacing with one of those gargantuan paws, a tangle of wires and cybernetic implants connecting it to an ominous-looking control station. Control, Ramirez muttered, her eyes narrowed. They want living weapons. Kale nodded. And not just for us. We sell to the highest bidder, warlords, fringe colonies, anyone desperate enough to defend themselves in this unforgiving galaxy. And who can blame them? The deep sleepers make those augmented Yeti look like house pets. My skin crawled. The enormity of it all. The violation of those ancient beings, the cold-blooded profiteering from conflict. It was clear Kale and his crew weren't interested in noble defenses, they thrived on war. But why here? I asked, needing to understand the full scope of their scheme. You mentioned the weapons tech on Eos, but it seems like more trouble than it's worth. Kale gave a wry grin. You're catching on. It's about more than just the salvage. It's about control. He gestured vaguely towards the stars outside the viewport. Out there, corporations and empires squabble over planets, resources, shipping lanes. Eos, and soon this entire sector, is off the charts, unofficial. Perfect place to hide a project of this magnitude. He fixed us with a steely gaze. You saw what those Yeti can do. We can harness that power, control those creatures. Well, imagine the chaos if that information leaked out. Every power-hungry warmonger this side of the galaxy would descend on this system. It would be a bloodbath. The silence that followed was heavy. The gravity of the situation was slowly sinking in. We weren't just observers anymore. We were caught in a deadly web, our fates entwined with the future of an entire sector, and the monstrous secret that lay within it. A flicker of movement caught my eye. On the far side of the observation deck, a technician fumbled with a control panel, a frantic look on his face. Before we could react, a siren blared through the base. Kale swore under his breath. Malfunction, he snarled before barking into a communicator. Full sweep of Subject 6. I want containment teams ready for biohazard lockdown. My blood ran cold. Subject 6, it had to be one of the dormant behemoths, and something had gone very wrong. Chaos erupted within the base. Technicians scattered, their faces etched with a mixture of fear and grim determination. Warning lights flashed a menacing crimson across the bulkheads. Kale cursed, his voice a tense snap over the intercom. Containment teams to Bay 4. Deploy suppressors and sedation protocols. I repeat, full sedation. What's happening? Ramirez demanded, her usual authority now tinged with a note of panic. Subject 6 is showing unexpected neural activity. Kale's face was a mask of tension. The damn thing shouldn't be waking up for another cycle. In the observation chamber, the monstrous limb twitched, then jerked violently. The technicians leapt away, their shouts echoing in the cavernous space. One, less nimble than his comrades, stumbled and fell. An agonizing scream pierced the air. We watched in horror as the severed limb pulsed with a sickly energy, the cybernetics sparking and spitting. The fallen technician was gone, vanished in a spray of blood and shattered ice fragments. It absorbed him, Anya gasped, her voice barely a whisper. Kale swore viciously, hitting a panel that slammed an emergency bulkhead down over the observation window. Biohazard breach. Get to evac pods, now. But even as he barked orders, a tremor rumbled through the asteroid base. The lights flickered, then died, plunging us into a suffocating darkness punctuated by the cacophony of klaxons and panic shouts. What's going on? I yelled over the din, fumbling blindly for Anya and Ramirez. Kale's reply was laced with a primal fear that sent a shiver down my spine. It's waking up. It's damn well waking up. Through the intermittent flashes of emergency lighting, I saw a monstrous shadow loom against the shattered reinforced glass. Colossal claws raked at the wreckage, and a booming roar echoed through the base, a sound so deep and resonant it seemed to vibrate through my very bones. The base groaned in protest, chunks of rock and debris raining down. In that terrifying moment, I knew our captivity was over. But freedom had been replaced by a fight for survival against an ancient, unimaginable horror. Suddenly, a rough hand seized my arm, dragging me through the darkness. This way. Ramirez's voice was strained, barely audible over the deafening roar of the awakening creature. Blindly, I followed as she stumbled down a dimly lit emergency passage. Anya was close behind, her breath ragged in my ear. Behind us, the base thrummed and shrieked, as if the asteroid itself was being torn apart from within. The evacuation pods were at the end of a long, sloping tunnel, the only potential escape from this disintegrating nightmare. As we sprinted, something massive and impossibly heavy crashed through the ceiling above us. Moonlight speared through the wreckage, casting a monstrous, clawed shadow that seemed to stretch on forever. "Hurry!" Anya shrieked, a note of hysteria in her voice. The pods, our salvation, were tantalizingly close. But as we neared them, a horrifying sight sent despair crashing through me. The pod doors were mangled, warped outward as if by colossal strength. Deep gouges marred the metal, and a crimson stain streaked the twisted hull. Whatever creature had awakened down below, it wasn't contained. And it was coming for us.